that Gloria there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I need to floss a little bit so I can smile.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it wasn't the raccoon. It was Gloria flossing.
Stop. Okay, it's
Do you
4
have
o'clock.
Lindley's number?
What was that?
Do you, uh, do you have Lindley's number?
Yes,
Thought
I
you
do.
Okay, can you text her or call
I've
her?
got Arnie's number.
No, I called Arnie. He's not answering. I left him a message. But
I'm not
Lindley,
sure. Let's see.
okay, I'm gonna mute.
Okay, well, I am going to start the meeting. It's 4 o'clock. So welcome to our third book club, KBS book club. Our spring pick of Israel by Noah Tishby. So thank you all for joining us again. And I just wanted to say, like, well, you all read it, but this book covers just a lot of history and perspectives. And I'm kind of less interested in a lecture about it, but I really want to know what stood out for everyone. So if anyone want to go first and just start off this, I guess here's your question. What is one thing in the book that you did not know before? Anyone? Okay, Nella.
I didn't realize that that she had such a long history in Israel, and I didn't know that her father had gone down to Africa and helped establish. I can't even remember which country in Africa. Help establish people having their own government. The blacks down there having their own government. I didn't realize that, and I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I remember that. You're right.
That I think he felt that the same sort of feelings he had for getting organized and getting a country up and running for the Jews in Israel was the same feeling that the blacks might have for their country. And, he was trying
Exactly.
to do that.
Thank you. There's some weird roaring sound. I wonder, Barry, do you think you can put on mute when you're not talking?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who want to say something that they did not know before that they learned in this book?
Well, for me, learning about her family's story was really super interesting. I can't say that there's anything I didn't know, but her way she put it together was enlightening even to me. And not that I can verbatim repeat all the history and the strands of history. I definitely learned a lot of the international, what was going on internationally at before the actual time we call Zionism and the birth of the modern Zionist movement. I definitely learned a lot. She put it in context and in a timeline that was very, very super easy to follow.
Right. Well, here we have an expert in the Israel world, you and Yehuda, having lived there and you being born there. So it's interesting to hear your perspective of this because for us here, like I've never even been to Israel, so a lot of it was new for me. Lindley and Arnie, welcome, and Elaine, welcome. We're just starting our conversation about Israel. If you had a chance to read the book, I
listened to it. She's very entertaining.
Yes, yeah.
I'd never heard of her before, but I guess she's a big star, and has a lot of creds. But, I don't watch a lot of stuff, so what can I tell you?
Okay.
I remember I was born in 1940, so I was 8 years old in 48, and I was aware I was going to Hebrew school. So reading about this was really valuable for me because it it recalled the world situation at the time of Israel's establishment, and it also recalled the international reaction to Israel. There was a slogan at the time, guns for the Arabs and sneakers for the Jews, because a lot of guns were being shipped from New York, and they were meant for the Arabs, and then the Jews were stealing the stuff and shipping it to the Jews. And so that was an efficient way to get guns where they were needed. And I remember those years, and I remember what was going on in the world. And at that time, Israel was very popular with America, as my memory has it. Israel was an underdog. There were 7 or 8 Arab states attacking Israel at the very same time. And so America loves underdogs. And so this was a very exciting kind of a reflection of all of this. And then, of course, the timing of the choice of this book corresponding to what was going on now in Iran and everything else was quite fortuitous. And my concern over recent decades has been the lack of adequate PR and by Jews and by Israelis as to what's going on, because what's going on is not simply waving a Palestinian flag and saying free the Palestinians. It's far more complex, but that has not been getting out. And so I think that's one of the reasons we find ourselves in such a challenged situation today. But I might be getting ahead of the discussion.
No, that's really good. That's exactly what. God, my screen keeps moving. What I really appreciate about her book, I'll say one thing and I'll let you guys go, is that she had this conversational tone, which was just easier to go ahead and get pulled into each part of the story. A very long book, but it wasn't dry or anything because she just pulls you along as if she's just talking to you sitting on a couch. So I appreciated that. I think Elaine, go ahead, and then Arnie, and then Yehuda.
As far as the publicity goes, she was on firing line a couple of months ago. I think I mentioned that. And she was promoting her new book, which I guess is much more up to date on what's going on right now. So
Yeah,
I haven't had
Uncomfortable
a chance.
Conversations. It's
Pardon
called
me?
Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew.
Have you read
The-
it?
No, I have a sample on my Kindle, but I haven't started
So,
yet. But
so it's not a sequel to the current events?
It's not. I just
No.
listened to the first 2 hours of it right before this.
Oh, okay. Well, that's too bad. Actually, I was hoping it would be. Anyway, I did like her timeline at the end because it was hard to remember everything. And then when I got to that chronology at the very end, it kind of refreshed my memory of all the things that happened in a timeline sequence. So that was pretty good. It would be nice to read something about what's going on right now. And I don't have any references for that, but it would be, if anybody knows of any book that's just come out, that would be good to know.
Arnie,
Yeah, the only thing that bugged me is she'd preface every little bit of history with, I'm a liberal, my family is a liberal, but, and then give, of course, the other side of the story. It just, was definitely not the liberal side of the story, but she kept repeating that. I thought that was very interesting, and yet, bugged me.
okay. Yehuda?
I wanted to address something that Barry just said. I think this actually came up at our conference as well, that, in Hebrew, the word is hasbarah. Hasbarah is the narrative, the story that you tell that explains your point of view, that Israel has been weakened for quite a while. And it's very unfortunate because it sort of demonstrates a type of hubris that that Israel knows better, so therefore why should it have to explain itself? And it's an absolute shame, and it hurts it hurts that Israel's not taking this on and doesn't consider it important enough to take it on, because they would have done it. Everybody says this. Who doesn't say it? In the conference, everybody acknowledged the Hasbara wasn't good. So,
Okay, Matan.
Well, of course, what I didn't know about her is that she is the writer for Euphoria on HBO.
Oh, yes.
She's actually a television writer, which is probably why it's so conversational, because that's what she does.
Good
And
point.
as far as her family goes, her family's probably the closest thing that we have to royalty or an elite in Israel. I mean, they're a pretty prominent family on both sides.
Okay. Aviva.
You guys just stop me whenever you want to, because you know I have too much to say. So number one, back to Arnie. I think her prefacing by saying she's a liberal, she comes from a liberal family, that is to have that very clear as she's saying things that might sound not liberal. And I it's even more important in the second book, which I read today. I listened to the entire book at fast speed, the important difficult conversations with a Jew. So it becomes kind of apparent, because if you think now of who's speaking about what's going on in the Middle East, it appears that the Jewish Israeli community is either liberal, which means they have issues with Israel. They think Israel's doing everything wrong vis-a-vis, Palestinians, vis-a-vis anything, right? And then you have the complete opposite, which says, yeah, if you support Israel, you got to support Trump because he's the only one who's, willing to go out there and support Israel. And this is very problematic. And as Yehuda well knows, when you speak to Israelis, there's a lot of misunderstandings about when you say certain things, it pegs you. And I think that she's saying, don't peg me, even though I'm going to say some things that might sound difficult. So I think that's the context in which I understand her doing that. A different thing altogether I just want to bring up, because for the rest of the conversation. So this book was written before October 7th.
Yes.
And the second book was written after. And the second book almost didn't get written because her plan to co-write it with the other author, got pretty much pushed aside because of October 8th. And if you listen to the book, you'll understand why October 8th is a more important date than October 7th. Because that's exactly how long it took for the horror that people naturally felt about October 7th, the natural reaction that every human should have felt, and how quickly that could get put aside because of the underlying, you know what I'm going to say, the underlying theme of it all, which is anti-Semitism and anti-Israel. So that's the context. This book was written not in relation to October 7th at all. It was written before. It was even published before. But
Right.
most people didn't read it until after October 7th.
Yes. Arnie, go ahead.
Yeah. Obviously, she's a very talented person and a good spokesperson for Israel. And I think Israel benefited very much from this book by her testimony, her eloquence, her talents, and everything else. And although, I was born a year before Israel, I always had very close ties with my family. Following it, when I turned 13, they had a special thing in Chicago where they filled the Ari Crown Auditorium with all the Jewish kids, around my age, and brought in the prime minister or the president of Israel, I can't remember, and did this host ceremony. And it was very, Zionistic and positive in my, as a memory in my upbringing.
Okay. If anyone else, before I go to the next question.
I'd like to say something.
Okay. I don't know who's talking.
Gloria.
Oh, Gloria. Sorry. I can't. I have female voice, male voice. I don't have distinguishing
Oh,
voices.
right, right. Here I am.
Okay.
I liked how she described the whole situation with the Palestinians
Mm.
because it's like a no-win situation. It's been they've been set up, and and then you have people who are objecting to Israel's treatment of of the Palestinians, and Palestine, they say, came before Israel and all this, and she clarified all that. Is
Oh
there
my
any
goodness.
hope? Is there any hope for Palestine to ever be able to rule itself in the Gaza or wherever they're given? I mean, also, brain. What's the word when you train someone to believe something? People are bad. They've been trained to believe that the Jews are terrible and did everything bad
Brainwashed.
to them.
Yep.
And I mean, is it hopeless?
It
Re-education
certainly
needed.
doesn't help to wage war on people. It creates generations of hate. It's a
Right.
never-ending cycle.
Right.
Arnie says that Matan says it was published in 2021. He just chatted. Aviva next, and then Yehuda.
Just a quickie to Gloria in response. The national anthem of Israel is the hope. So there is always hope. So just saying.
Yehuda.
One of the things she writes about is and I've read it in many different books as well. The Palestinians have always had a difficulty with leadership because, if someone is good, they get killed. And it's that way in Hamas, and there is an ethos amongst the ultra extreme that they do that, and it's the case as well amongst the Jews. Rabin was assassinated by a Kahanist, the same dudes who are colonizing the West Bank right now. It's not easy to have a conversation if you don't have leaders that you can talk to. Arafat supposedly never made a deal because he was always scared he'd be killed. So what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
It's very frustrating. What you do is you live your life and you try and do the best possible by your community. And that community, before the attack on October 7th, the exchange across the border into Gaza was a regular thing where people on both sides took care of themselves. And, that was destroyed by some extremists who decide that, their worldview, the fundamentalism is the worst that the world has anywhere it is. It's bad with any single group that really is fundamental. It does not favor our greater society.
And that's
Matan. Oh, sorry. Matan next, and then Arnie.
Yeah, Noah mentions this in her book. Palestinian is a construct. There's no such thing as a Palestinian. All the founders of Israel were Palestinian. Palestinian was anyone that lived in the Mandate of Palestine, resident. So Ben Gurion was a Palestinian. Golda Meir was a Palestinian. It was created in 1964. She mentions this. It's really a misnomer, but and it kind of bothers me that they're even hijacking the term, because every founder of Israel was a Palestinian by definition.
I try not to use it because it came from after the Romans conquered us, so I just try not to use it at all. I say the people in the Gazans or not. I don't use that word personally.
And
Arnie.
to be very honest with you, they're Arabs, but Arab is kind of also another problematic term, because what happened is there was an Arabic invasion in the 7th century, and Arabic colonialism imposed the Arabic culture on all these areas.
Hmm.
in the Middle East and North Africa.
Okay.
How come none of the other Arab nations want the Palestinians? Isn't that weird?
Well,
No,
it's
they're a
kind of
problem.
obvious.
Don't want
Wait, I have to go in order. Arnie, then Gloria, then Yehuda.
Sorry, I couldn't hold it back.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm just
Arnie.
wondering about a possible alternate reality that could have happened. After the horrible attack in October, and Israel was unprepared, by the way, for this, and that's a shanda right there. But let's say they absorbed the deserved positive reaction of the world community for being victims, right?
Mhm.
Instead of taking the lion war, go wipe everyone out stance, what would happen would be possibly the deal with Saudi Arabia would have happened. If that had happened, more Arab countries in the circle putting pressure on the extrema Meshuggahs, So, sometimes we get caught up in these vicious cycles that I personally believe in the peace movement and ways. I mean, if we haven't figured it out,
Why
maybe
don't
AI will
the
figure it out for us.
Palestinians
But we
get
can
accepted
have
by the
peace.
greater Arab world?
Okay. I forget where I am now. Oh, Barry, Gloria.
Yehuda pointed this out, and he's precisely and accurately correct. The situation is that we currently have extremists ruling the different international blocs. So we have Trump, who encourages extremism as a way of life. We have Netanyahu, who encourages extremism as a way of life. We have the Arab leaders, like the Ayatollah, who encourage extremism as a way of life. We have Christian leaders in the Republican Party who encourage extremism as a way of life. We have Putin, who is an extremist. So that's literally an impossible situation. So the Jewish solution for this is Mashiach, but there have been Mashiach representatives over the years. So, Golda Meir and Ben Gurion were really wonderful leaders, and Washington was a wonderful leader, and Lincoln was a wonderful leader. And I always was waiting for somebody to arise who could be a wonderful leader, but they're not arising. And right now, the people who are in favor of extremism are encouraging other extremists to do crazier and crazier things. So it's kind of scary to figure out how this can ever be solved, and that's my distress.
Gloria, did you have something to say also? Or no?
Say it again.
Gloria, I
No,
didn't.
I'm all ear.
Okay, Yehuda then.
There is a pretty good leader elected to Knesset right now, Mansour Abbas. You can read about him. Really, the Arabs in Israel, if they banded together and really all voted, they would get a pretty significant block in the Knesset, but they haven't gone there. To address something that Matan said as to why the Palestinians have not been basically embraced by the rest of the Arab world. One of the things that happened as a function of the 1949 was UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Worker Agency, or relief, I forget what it stands for, but basically they're the guys who went in and they basically favored the Palestinians quite a bit, but they also gave them a tremendous amount of education. And in exchange for that, they became the teachers of the Arab world. Well, that was not necessarily a good thing in the eyes of monarchies, in the eyes of dictatorships. And you saw that when the war in Kuwait took place, the first people thrown out were the Palestinian teachers because they are actually potentially foment democracy, because that was something they learned from the Israelis. Even though they weren't living in the democracy, they saw it.
Okay, Nella, go ahead.
I just had one thing that I wanted to mention, and I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but in the last Academy Awards, there was a documentary by a Palestinian and a Israeli who talked about, it was called No Other Land, and it
Mhm.
gave, a pretty, I haven't been able to see, it's pretty hard to find here, but I'm sure if I asked Alan, we probably could see it. But anyway, they came together to see what could be done in order to make this better and what is actually happening in Israel. And
I heard he was arrested for some kind of violence in the
yeah,
West Bank.
when they went back,
Yeah,
to the Middle East, yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if I have any respect for that guy, but
What?
I'm very opinionated and I just kind of keep my opinions to myself.
I
Sorry.
mean, the two people who wrote the documentary,
Yeah.
you heard bad things about them?
hmm Okay.
Okay.
Next question. What do you think the author was trying to correct or clarify about Israel that she feels people misunderstand? Aviva wants to. I could just tell she's already excited to talk.
I'd rather hear what other people have to say.
Actually, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I would like to hear what Aviva has to say, because all of us who are here have been living here all the time. Only you and Yehuda have gone over to Israel recently. And I don't see any solution coming from this neighborhood. I drive down Kukini Highway and I see somebody waving a Palestinian flag. They don't know what the hell that means. I mean, a Palestinian flag is a great concept, but as this book points out, the Palestinian individuals who make up that whole area have had multiple opportunities to collaborate and find solutions,
And leadership roles.
but they failed. And we used to believe back in the 40s and 50s that the only way that Israel was able to exist was that the Arabs couldn't get along with each other. And that's true. They have not been able to come together. If they had a unified force, I didn't know about Shiites and the
Sunnis.
and I didn't know about that at the time. But as long as they hate each other more than they hate anybody else, they're going to fail. And now that you have Jews who are pro-Trump and anti-Trump, or so far we haven't gotten Orthodox and Reform fighting with each other, thank God. But I don't see a solution coming from this side of the planet. And so I'm curious to see what good people in Israel think might be a potential solution.
There is an ongoing discussion internationally about the one versus two state solution. Netanyahu is definitely a one state solution. And included in that is something that no one wants to talk about, but Ben Gvir and Smotrich, his two extremist members of the cabinet, they want to basically make it so uncomfortable for the Arabs to live there that they will leave. But that is not really what will happen, because in reality, if you combine the populations of the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel, you basically have 7 million Arabs of whichever particular persuasion they are, and 7 million Jews. And they are sharing this place. So, and they need to come up with something. There is a problem, though. One of the main problems is how do you actually deal with the open door policy of the right to return for Jews versus the open door policy, which is not there for anybody who might want to return to their childhood home in East Jerusalem. That's not allowed. And that is probably one of the real sticking points for any kind of peace to ever take place.
I see. Aviva.
So I think one of the things that this noise will go away just a second. It's just a truck. Okay. I think back to your first question. I think that for me, what I loved about the book, what I think she did the best, is she spoke very plainly. I think we sometimes forget the value of very plain speech. And as Yehuda brought into it, and as Barry brought in, Israel has never invested in the need to do anything about it because it seems so obvious. So the voice of the Israeli, I strive to be that eloquent because I think that's what she is offering in this book. She's offering what all Israelis, I'm not saying all Israelis lightly, so I'll take that away. What a lot of Israelis believe, but she's saying it very eloquently and with a lot more patience. The idea that some things are just generally right and some things are generally wrong are very convenient. You guys know how I feel about binaryism, but the reality is that we don't really go back and correct things from the past. The ability to move forward is that simple thing of each person recognizing, each state, each person recognizing another's right to exist, period. Now, we look at lots of countries around the world that have conflict, that are doing terrible things, and we don't begin to question their right to exist as a state. We're not like, we're going to eliminate all of Afghanistan. We're going to eliminate Russia. We don't talk this way about any other state except Israel. So the thing of hasbara, of explaining, Israelis have always just been really cocky about it. It's like, what is there not to understand? We have a group of people whose leadership, not the people, whose leadership says, there's no starting conversation. You don't have a right to exist, and that's it. Our goal is to eliminate you off the face of the earth, and period, that's it. So that's pretty simple, but it's no less true because of its simplicity. But the moving forward, despite all of this, there are countries who've said, we've got more to gain by being not trying to kill Israel. A lot of good stuff is coming out of there that we can use too. Note the Abraham Accords. Countries very unlikely say, what, the world is moving really quickly. We're not going to be left in the dust. There's a lot going on there we could benefit from. And so the moving forward together with the concept of hope is, that's where hope comes from, is you can't fix the past, but you can move forward and you have control over how you move forward. What it means in terms of, politics, it's very complicated, but if you look, the best thing about the book is the map, the various maps at the beginning of the book, the impossibility of the size of the country and how much international attention turns to being anti-Israel. It's unimaginable. Are we talking about resources? Come on. It's a little tiny strip of land. What are we talking about? There is plenty, and yet there's plenty for all. There always has been. The Arab Israelis would never have it any other way. They're not striving to go back to wherever their ancestors may or may not have come from. Not at all.
But they are here. When they're standing on Kuakini Highway, that's where they want to go back to.
The people standing on Kuakini Highway have absolutely no connection to the land.
Right, that's right. And they represent the vast majority of people in the United States and around the world who are hostile to Israel.
But that's anti-Semitism. We
Yes.
gotta, it's an easy way. You get one little thing and you can comfortably fall back into anti-Semitism because it's always there and it's always present. And if you read the next book, Barry, which you're going to really enjoy, I actually recommend listening to it because both the authors are reading it as a conversation. So if you can get an audiobook, that's,
What is it called?
Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew.
So the authors read it?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
really cool. It's lovely to listen to because it's that same sort of plain spokenness between two people whose backgrounds are very, very different, but they really bring those two people, their conversation says everything I try to say every time I speak about Judaism and Torah. Lo b'shamayim, it's not in the heavens. Elaine, your famous lines. You're looking in the wrong place. We're all humans. The answer to the most complex questions still starts in that place. Don't look over there. It's over here. Over here.
Right.
So
I
Same author.
I follow Noah Tishby on Instagram, so I always like listening to what she has to say. Arnie first and then Elaine.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many of you believe that the media also runs the narrative?
Well, that's
And,
my next question. So
okay,
you're right there.
I'll hold. Do you want me to go on or wait?
Can we just wait and then let's go to Elaine and
Sure,
then I'll pop the next question in. Elaine,
sure.
Well, I was just going to point out, her chapters about the BDM and how the propaganda is getting proselytized across especially the younger generation. That's why you see these Palestinian flags where people don't know anything about it. So,
right, that's my next question. Oh yeah, BDS too, yes. Okay, here's a question. The author talks about misinformation narratives about Israel. Where do you think that people get most of their understanding of the conflict today besides TikTok? Go ahead. Arnie, go ahead. Now you're up.
Yeah, so my belief is always that there's very little morality and a whole lot of demand for capitalistic advantages with corporations. Large corporations run the media, and their only goal is to make money, to excite the cycle, keep your attention going. And Marshall McLuhan said it in the 60s, for Christ, excuse me. But at any rate, you know, it's pretty obvious. And so they'll run the narrative, hate the Jew, and then all of a sudden it builds up enough hatred that unfortunately we get murders in synagogues and Jewish stars painted on stop signs in Kona.
Yeah, right.
And it's then that drives their media clicks because everyone's looking at the horrible deaths, and then the cycle starts again,
I,
and
I
they're
think that,
making money hand over fist on this.
yeah, I
Hand
don't think
over.
that we've been doing a good job of countering it with we don't do a lot of media stuff to correct this. So I don't know why. Anyone else want to talk about this? Oh, Courtney, I see your hand up. Court,
Media issue is not just Israel related, but really like all issues.
oh,
Not,
sorry. No, go ahead, Courtney, then Nella. I'm sorry.
yeah. So it's there's over time there's been like a lack of trust on all media um platforms, whether it's social media or news media or even written, reading it. People don't know like if they can even trust their sources, and even if you cross source, you're just like, well, a lot of it is regurgitation, and they're repeating fragments, and no one's getting the real stories or the whole stories to even like I don't know. I think that's why I stay quiet a lot because, like, regardless of like Israel or other current issues, it's like, well, I don't really know because I wasn't there in person to see with my own true eyes.
I see.
And with Israel too, it's like I'm physically not there, so I can try to tap into the perspectives of like people who have been there, who have lived there, but I myself only know fragments of the culture, so I will never fully understand. As much as I try, I'll never fully get it.
Right. Nella, go ahead. Sorry if I
Oh,
didn't
no,
call on
you
you
didn't.
earlier.
Yeah, I was just turning up the volume. I couldn't hear Courtney very well. The other thing I think we should think about, it's not only our media. One of the things our media does, I think it gets influenced by, Iraq was out there right away. At, they are the underdogs. The um, the Hamas was out there right away. Russia is out there. They're trying to do things in our elections, and of course, Trump never wants to assume that he gets any help from Russia. But
Mm.
there are a lot of countries out there who are trying to influence through the media here, and they're very sophisticated.
Mm. Okay, that's true. And I was thinking that here on Facebook or Instagram, they do these little short little memes, and people are not educated enough or too lazy to research it, and they just see something, repeat it, post it, and they're on board with it without any thinking. And that we just like outsource our thinking. Go ahead, Barry.
So you're right. So now what? That's the question that I have. I don't get into discussions with friends that I have, like at the office and other friends. I have a few friends that like we walk up the hill with, and so we spend more time with it. Some of them are Jewish, some of them are not Jewish. In general, the Jews that I walk with hate Netanyahu more than they hate the Arabs, because the publicity about Netanyahu is that he likes to kill children and he drops bombs on children.
Oh my goodness.
So, well, that's true. I mean, that's what you see. And Pete Hegseth was just interviewed, and he was accused of the same thing, that he likes to allow bombs to be dropped on American soldiers. Well, he's incompetent, and Netanyahu is not incompetent. He's malicious in a lot of ways. But
And frightened.
and he's also frightened. So what do? You know, we not everybody that we run into during the week knows that we're Jewish, or knows that we're part of the Jewish leadership in Kona. If you talk to the Chabad people, they are fiercely defending Israel, and I will fiercely defend Israel forever. But it doesn't mean that I approve of the way they're doing things. And then there's this other question of how they explain what they're doing. So I'm curious to see from our friends here on the screen what we might do with our daily lives when we run into people who are somewhat open to listen to us.
Recommend this book, maybe?
Yes, but this book predates October.
It still gets some education though. I have Yehuda first, then Matan. Are you done, Barry? I didn't want to interrupt you. Okay. Yehuda.
My brother lives in Greater Taos, New Mexico, and they just conducted a community forum to discuss Israel. And I would say the majority of the people who were there, they're a much larger Jewish community than us, even though they probably meet less and do less Jewishly than we do. And are talking about it, you know, if that was something that was even viable here. I thought we didn't have enough of a critical mass here to actually do that. Because I don't want to set up a situation where that would be considered unsafe, even though it's hard to even say that about Hawaii, because I think Hawaii is a tremendously safe place, and I think that we are not, you know, the Reds and Blues in this state are neighbors, and it starts there. We are a neighboring kind of state, and if we had the wherewithal, maybe that would be an interesting thing to take on.
Matan and then Aviva.
I've always felt like if there's ever going to be any kind of resolution, it's going to have to come from the grassroots. It's not going to come from the politicians. It's not going to come from the religious leaders. They're all set in their positions for whatever reason. And I would like to see people at the grassroots come together and tell the extremists and the politicians that what they really want to happen, that they want coexistence.
Viva.
I think the coexistence was, over the thousands of years of recorded history, were more the norm. That's just the reality. Thinking that politicians and or religious institutions, or as they call it, institutions of religion, can provide any sort of straight guidelines for peace. You know, peace is a product of something that happens. Peace you can strive for, but on the way to peace, there's a whole lot. And unfortunately, before October 7th, or no, I'm not going to take it, unfortunately, before October 7th, there were many examples of coexistence in that part of Israel that really, really was damaged the worst. And that took a big, huge setback. That's one of the heartbreaks about Israel, is about how many of the people that actually did the actual work of being neighbors, of coexisting, and how absolutely stunned they were. So it's a complicated situation, but the answer to, as a Jew, I will say that I do believe we have a pretty good set of historical examples and a lived history that can lead us in the right direction. Whether if you use the term two-state solution, that's very political, but the reality is that coexistence, you know, one state, two state, well, Israel can't be a Jewish democracy if it's it can't be, they can't coexist. If it's only Jewish, how can it be a democracy when there are 2 million Arabs and Palestinians already and growing? So the conflict is real, but then reality in the everyday, what it looks like to be an Arab in Israel, you don't have any access to understanding what that means. If you went to Israel, any one of you, and you were a tourist and you had a medical emergency, 50-50 that the doctor treating you might be an Arab.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Most pharmacists in Israel are Arabs, because there was a great way, I don't even remember the politics of it, but it became the kind of the easiest way to get a very high yielding, a good paying job. And they're like, this is cool. It's available. We're doing it. So when you go to get, and in Israel, you get advice from a pharmacist. It's not just somebody who dispenses whose face you never see. You go up to the counter and they ask you questions and they give you answers. They're not like not allowed to give you medical advice. They're trained. And half of them are Arabs or more. You know, it's just not at all what people think, that it's like divided down the middle. What Yehuda is saying, if the Arab population felt ownership, if the Jewish state was not just a Jewish state, they would feel more ownership. And if they actually, if all the Arab population voted, it would make a huge difference. Because a parliamentary system relies on smaller parties, not just on one majority party. So, and right now, the smallest party has the most power because they're completing that, number that reaches over 60 for a majority, and they have an unimaginable amount of power. The Kahanists that we're talking about, who say, no, we don't need to kill all the Palestinians. All we need to do is make them so miserable they'll want to leave on their own. That's the Kahanist view, and always has been. It's just now they're in the parliament. It's scary.
Yes. Arnie next, and then Yehuda.
So to follow up, excuse me, on what Aviva said, and taking advantage of opportunities that bring people together, we got an invitation to have a joint service with Anapuka Church sometime, and Barry and I are in touch with the pastor there. So it might be something we consider at a board meeting or something, and come together and some kind of peace vigil or whatever you want to make it.
But it kind of matches what we learned in that the leaders convening conference. Arnie.
Yeah, well,
right
we
in.
have the door open to us. The guy asked us to. So
That's
then
awesome.
the other thing is, I know there's some Arab realtors that I've talked to. One guy named Mohammadi, and I'm wondering if they have like a whole Muslim congregation here that we could get together with. So I'm going to investigate that and find out. For all I know, he could be a Christian or a Jew, but I'll find out. I'm going to follow up on that.
Okay. Yehuda.
One of the things that's going on in Israel, let's just say that we're not going to count the 2 million Arabs in Gaza and the 3 in the West Bank. So that leaves us 10 million in the center of the country who are all citizens. About 2 million of those are Arab. That's basically 20% of the population. If you do any search on equal division of resources through the government, the Arabs don't get their share. They never have gotten their share. And even with that, Israel is such a booming place that any place you go, you will see Arab cities that have got modern buildings, and they don't have the infrastructure because the government hasn't built it to the same extent as it has in the Jewish community. And maybe one of the problems is just what Aviva was semi-alluding to, is that just calling it a Jewish state is one of the problems. That the Arabs have so much concern with face. And if you eliminated the word Jewish state and still functioned that way, it would actually alleviate a certain amount of pressure within the state, in my opinion. I think that this has not really been addressed. It's also not been addressed that in reality, the Israelis learn Hebrew, but they don't learn Arabic. The Arabs learn both, and they're fluent in both. And that is a huge symbol. And it's a huge, thumbing your nose at the other half, basically. The Israelis have got a lot of work to do to bring in a real successful, we're living equally in this society.
Maybe something to think about. Okay, one last question, and then it's already 4:51. It's a either or. Who do you think this book is written for? Jews, non-Jews, or both? Or would you recommend this book to someone who wants to understand Israel better? Anyone? Matan had his hand up.
I think it's written for anyone who wants to understand Israel. Because I think her point over and over again is Israel has been misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah.
And Israel has its problems. She acknowledges that. And I've read another book by a fellow named Saber. And his father came to Israel from Iraq. And a lot of the Mizrahi Jews got a very bad. They also weren't treated equitably, just like the Arabs.
Yeah, I read a book about him as a Jew. What was it called? It's maybe the same book I read.
Let's see.
I forget. It's okay. You just jogged my memory.
You could just
My
ask
Father's
Sharona
Paradise.
about it.
My Father's Paradise
Oh no, there's a different one.
by Ariel Sabar. Ariel Sabar in Hebrew.
Thank you. Aviva.
You're on silence.
I'm going to defer to someone else because I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else before I start?
No,
to
I forgot. I remembered.
Okay.
I remembered. So Noah Tishby herself, in an interview I heard years ago when this book came out, before October 7th again, said she was writing this book specifically because her specific audience was Americans and American Jews, which is not surprising. She was horrified at the level of lack of understanding at all about the history of Israel among Americans, and then she realized that was among American Jews too. So that's from an interview I heard with her a long time ago.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That does make a lot of sense. Anyone else? And then I'll announce the next book. Ask Rona about the, I don't know, Ms. Rothie. What did you say, Arnie?
Ask
just
Sharona
saying,
about
we
the
have a
Mizrahi
member-
Jews.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have a member of the congregation who's a Mizrahi Jew.
I'm not sure that the Lonbergs are members of the congregation.
Mm,
Oh,
I see.
They're not, but it would be nice if they were, you know.
Would
I
be.
think
this could
we
be a
lost them.
doorway to get them back. I know they
Maybe.
were at one time.
Mm.
Maybe
What'd
could
you do
help.
to piss them off this time?
I don't know. I don't know the history.
Okay, it's 4:55. I'm gonna go in. The next book is a fiction book for our summer pick, and it's called "Don't Forget to Write" by Sarah Goodman Confino, Confino. And our next date is Sunday, July 12th at 10 a.m.
Why do we have to wait that long?
We'll be
Because
out.
I don't want to go and do it more than quarterly, but I'm going to ask someone else to take the lead for the next year. I've done it. Oh, that means I've done a full year, and then I'm going to turn it over to someone else, the torch. And I was hoping that Yehuda would pick up the torch on that. I don't
I
know.
want you to know that these meetings are great, and I've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry that it got canceled last
No,
time, but my inverter blew from lightning, and I had no power for a week and a half.
No,
So
I totally understand that, but
yeah.
we won't be here July 12th. But as time goes on,
But
it'd
maybe
be
we
lovely
could
if,
do it on your.
well, maybe, yeah, I could do it by remote control, but it'd be lovely if we could, eventually get to every 2 months, maybe. I just think
Okay.
these meetings are good. Your choices of books are
What's the
fascinating.
title of the next one?
Don't forget to write. It's a nice, light summer read book. I really enjoyed it, so that'd be fun. Something light, something heavy,
Yes.
try to go back and forth.
And her name is Consonol.
Her name is Sarah Goodman, and then Confino, Confino, Confino.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
that's
want to
great.
thank you guys it was a really great conversation, and everyone
Yes.
participated so well, and it was really
Show.
good topic. Thank you all. I really appreciate everybody.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good
Thank you.
session. Thank you.
Oh, there it is. Thank you, Alan. There's what it is. That's the book. Alan is amazing. I swear. Sarah Goodman Confino. Yeah, she's a really good author. She's just a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed the book as much as I did. I'm more of a fiction person, so there you go.
Well, this is
Oh.
good. This is going to be fun.
Okay.
Adios, everyone.
Thank you.
I'll put out the email so the rest of the group
What's
has
the
it.
date again? The 12th?
Sunday, July 12th at 10 a.m. And I'll put out an email to the whole congregation so they have it with that book title on it. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, sure thing. Okay, bye-bye.
Ah, the last study. I see why Matan is not joining us for these parashot.
Aviva,
Yeah.
I had a question that I didn't know exactly how to ask, but something about why before October 7, it seemed that we, at least with the with that, not with the Shia, but the people from Qatar and the other Middle Eastern countries over there, it seemed like Israel had more of a conversation, and it looked like there was some, I don't know, just that things were going better between us.
So this is what I tried to say. This is my opinion. I think that there are people who agree with me. There are people who don't agree with me. But it's back to this concept of we look forward in order to make the world a better place. because we can't really fix things that happened in the past. I know there's a place for the idea of reparations, and I know Yoda feels very strongly about this, but yet when we look at the problems we have today, we look forward. Also, simultaneously, there's a reality that for whatever reason, and in the next book of hers, she discusses this, but for whatever reason, a lot of really, really interesting research and development happened in Israel. And I think the Emirates and the countries around that area, oil is finite,
Right.
right? They're looking to the future and they're seeing they have more to gain by not being an eternal enemy of Israel. Money, unlike our president, who will do anything for money, money is not what they need. They got more than that, right? Money's not the issue. So what is the issue? The issue is, can they still be great leaders for their tiny countries? All of Qatar is like, I forget how many, 200,000, 300,000 people, and look how much power they seem to wield in these days of negotiations before they got proven that they have no power at all in the face of rockets. And Israel had to send Iron Dome defense over to those countries, but they have more to gain by not hating Israel and wishing it for its demise. That's it. I think it's very simple. In my mind, it's very simple. When you look forward, you say, well, that hasn't worked. If it was that simple to eliminate that tiny strip of land surrounded by enemies, it's not that it hadn't been tried. It just apparently is too difficult. So the answer is, we got more to gain. That's it. Pragmatism.
Well, when you have Hamas and Hezbollah backed by Iran and all that hatred, I mean, Iran really wants to exterminate Israel and all the Jews. And they're funding Hamas and they're funding Hezbollah. And those organizations are getting more prominent in the local governments. So it's really an orchestrated attack. And I think we were blindsided. Everybody was blindsided on October 7th that this would happen.
The blindsiding on October 7th was not the amount of hate and the things that actually happened. The blindsiding was how unprepared Israel was.
Yes.
That was a blindsiding because there's nothing that happened on October 7th that wasn't part of what they wished they could do. I mean, if you just look at the history of how the world reacts to the idea of Gaza and how that has become the rallying cry, that is good use of propaganda, which Israel does not do. That is excellent use of propaganda.
Yep.
To get the whole world on board, to get young people who care, like, oh no, we don't have anything to fix here. This is such a perfect, we live in Hawaii, my house. This land didn't belong to somebody before me. Hello. There's plenty to correct in the world.
Pictures
Yeah.
did it. Pictures did it.
So the shock, I think, was more on Israel's part to say, wow. But the atrocity